Hey, Scott Eblin here with this week's video book club selection. The book this week is one that I received for the holidays, and I just finished it last night. It's called Rocket Men, the epic story of the first men on the moon by Craig Nelson. Came out last year. It was on a lot of best of 2009 book lists, and a couple of reasons I selected this. One is I am an absolute astronaut, space program, especially the Apollo program, to the moon junkie. Even have my Buzz Aldrin G.I. Joe doll in its official collector's case. The Major Matt Mason doll that my wife bought for me for Christmas last year on eBay. His little visor comes up and everything, and I had one of these, not this exact one, but I had one of these when I was a little kid, and all kinds of very cool Major Matt Mason paraphernalia in the days of the moonshots. And so I love this book. I think it's a great book for leaders. It's a great book if you're a space buff like me, and it works on so many levels. One is just the awe-inspiring achievement of basically starting a manned spaceflight program a little bit before 61, but that was the first launch. And then by 1969, we're on the moon. And you realize, I didn't realize until I read this book, just how much risk was involved in that. It was calculated risk for sure, but people just made amazing decisions and showed amazing persistence, innovation, courage, all of the above to accomplish this. And it's an extremely well-written book. One of the things I really noticed was how much eloquence, I guess is the word I'm looking for, was in the language. Just to take a couple of examples from Neil Armstrong, quotes from him. And here's one that he was talking about how things worked in the run-up to Apollo 11 in July of 1969. Quote from Armstrong in the book: "When I was working here at the Manned Spacecraft Center, you could stand across the street and you couldn't tell when quitting time was, because people didn't leave at quitting time in those days. People just worked, and they worked until whatever their job was when it was done. And if they had to be there until 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock or 9:30 or whatever it was, they were just there. They did it, and then they went home. So 4 o'clock or 4:30, whenever the bell rings, you didn't see anybody leaving. Everybody was still working. The way that happens, and this is really key, I think, the way that happens and the way that that made it different from other sectors of the government, to which some people are sometimes properly critical, is that this was a project in which everybody involved was 1, interested, 2, dedicated, and 3, fascinated by the job they were doing. And whenever you have those ingredients, whether it be government or private industry or a retail store, you're going to win." So again, recapping, interested, dedicated, and fascinated by the jobs they're doing. I think if you're a leader, it's interesting to think about how to set up the situation for your team so their work is interesting, fascinating, and it drives the dedication. And then I said a minute ago, the eloquence point. This is a quote from Neil Armstrong later in the book, and I think it is really terrific from the perspective that it brings. It says, "Science has not mastered prophecy. We predict too much for the next year, yet far too little for the next 10. Responding to the challenge is one of democracy's great strengths. Our successes in space lead us to hope that this strength can be used in the next decade in the solution of many of our planet's problems." I love that line about, we predict too much for the next year and far too little for the next 10, and I think that's a pretty good one to think about as we're here at the beginning of 2010 and we're all still focused on our goals for this year. I know we're running a little bit long, but let me just wrap up with one more quote from this. It's at the very beginning of the book, before you even get into the first chapter. It's just an excerpt from it, and again, it's about perspective and the way we set our goals in our organizations and even in our country, and kind of answers the question, what are we in it for, or what should we be in it for? In 1969, a few months after Apollo 11 landed on the moon, Rhode Island Senator John Pastore was interrogating Fermilab physicist Robert Wilson at a Senate hearing on whether the federal government should spend $250 million to build a new collider. The senator wanted to know, would this collider add to the security of the country? "No, sir, I don't believe so," Wilson answered. Senator Pastore: "Nothing at all?" Mr. Wilson: "Nothing at all." Senator Pastore: "It has no value in that respect." Mr. Wilson: "It only has to do with the respect with which we regard one another. the dignity of men, our love of culture. It has to do with, are we good painters, good sculptors, great poets? I mean, all the things we really venerate in our country and are patriotic about. It has nothing to do directly with defending our country except to make it worth defending. That is some good stuff right there. So this book, Rocket Men, can't recommend it highly enough. If you have engineers in your life, or if you're an engineer yourself, you'll really like this book, because the big heroes in this book, in addition to the astronauts, are the engineers who made it all happen. Really cool book, Rocket Men by Craig Nelson. Go read it. Have fun. Take care. Bye.